So we got our recording started. So this is a presentation about art writing. So writing your artist bio, your artist statement, and your artist CV. And this is a series that I'm putting on for my artist residency with the New Brunswick Disability Art Collective. And we've been funded for this project through Arts NB, and we're very grateful for that. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about is why why does it matter? Why does all this art writing stuff matter to us? Um, I, you know, we're dedicating an entire hour just talking about it, um, which is pretty impressive. And I know it can feel a little dry. So I think the first thing that we have to say is your work matters. And this is why we write about what we do. So this is a chance to tell, people like viewers, customers, collectors, juries, um, just regular people, gallery goers, anyone about your work. So this is your time to say what you want to say and say what you want people to know about your work. Um, so I'm going to give you some general writing tips to kind of start out with. So these are things that I'd like us to just keep in mind as we're writing, because uh, looking at it as kind of an overarching theme, I find works better for me when I'm approaching this type of writing, because it can feel really hard when you're delving deep in yourself to figure out like all the stuff you want to talk about with your art. So my first tip is to be concise. So like trying to get to the point. I know that can be really hard. I have difficulty with that. Um, but it can be really hard when, you've got a lot to say, you can end up meandering. So, always be on the lookout for sentences that say the same thing, but maybe only slightly different. Um, that way you're not kind of repeating yourself as you're writing. Another thing to consider is your audience. So consider, who are you writing this for? You know, it's gonna be different. So for like your bio or even your art statement, if you're sending these to like somewhere that's more of a casual opportunity versus an opportunity that's really, really formal, or like maybe in academia. So how and what you talk about and what you want to highlight might be different depending on the opportunities that you're seeking. So it's good to consider that, and it's good to tailor. Um, Another tip that I'd like to give is, don't use art speak or jargon. So try to avoid using a lot of technical terms, and try to speak as plainly as possible to make things more accessible. Because not everyone is an artist, that like not everyone is in your medium that's reading your content, so you may lose some people along the way, and that's a shame because everyone's work is so interesting. um you know Once we've written, I think it's important to rewrite it, then rewrite it again. um there's a thing that people will talk about in animation and in drawing, like no one draws clean. So your ideas are not fully formed when they come out of your mind. It's very similar with writing. It takes time to like fine tune and to like work in those layers of polish. So this is what rewriting helps us do. So don't be afraid to rewrite. Um, a little side note with that is, I actually will keep a change log. So I'll keep a versions, like different old versions of my writing, so I can go back, because sometimes there's stuff that you've cut out that you're like, hey, I actually loved that. So you can fish that out of the abyss if you need to. And my next tip is experiment with different styles of writing. Uh, there's always another way to say something. There's always another feeling that you might want to get at. So you can always write in a different style. If you get stuck, I think the most important thing to think about is the how, what, and why formula. It's something that I find really powerful to fall back on and gives us structure. So I have internal debate going on. I want to talk about CVs, but I have a couple interesting things. So I think I'm gonna dive directly into CVs right now. Um, when I was thinking of this presentation, I was thinking about my own art writing a lot, and how I approach things. So for my approach to when I'm sitting down and being like, I need to update my CV, I need to write a bio, I need to write an artist statement, and I'm panicking. I'm like, I have to do all of these things. Uh, Sometimes I will write my CV first, like I'll update my CV, um, because it gives me a starting point. So CVs are really used a lot for like if you're applying for grants, if you're applying to different opportunities like art opportunities, a lot of times they'll ask you for a CV. So what a CV is it's not a resume. So what you want to do is you want to have a list of it's a big list of all the things that you've done, versus a resume which highlights skills. And I also want to mention too, if someone asks you for a CV, do not send them a resume. um, because a lot of times you're like if it's for a grant, they may not read your grant because you didn't send them a CV. Uh, they can and things can get quite particular. So it's important to make sure that when someone asks for a CV that they get that and not a resume. Um, and your CV isn't a bio, it's not an artist statement. So it's just simply a list of things that you've done. Um, at my high school, there was a Latin saying, uh, and it translates to "the end crowns the work," which I think is pretty cool. And when I do my CVs, I actually think about that because this is your time to kind of crown your work. It's your time to kind of put down like all the cool things you've done and highlight them. Um, I think that one of the best things you can do with a CV is have two different copies or as many, like even three, because having a master CV document, like having a document with like everything, is so helpful because you can put everything that you've done. Um, and then you can have a separate document for like more tailoring. So, because you typically don't send out your long CV because you want to keep it to a page or two. So if you've got 3 pages, um, because some of us, uh, a lot of people show a lot of people, as you kind of get on in your career, you'll have just a really long CV. Um, it adds up very quickly. And it's good to just kind of tailor because it's makes it easier for people to read. Um, and I also mention this too because if you're multidisciplinary, if you like I do art, I do music, I write poetry. Um, so I've got my main CV, which is I just put everything on it. And then I have my CV where I highlight my visual art. And I have I'm working on a CV where I'm just highlighting like my teaching. So it just works for different opportunities that you're looking at. So it's good to keep your audience in mind even with your CV. Um, so I need to I'm going to share my screen actually. Um, and okay, so this is my this is my CV document. So what I've started with, I'm actually just going to move this over here, um, is
To see it larger, you can right click on Jessica's screen and click pin, and that will make it appear much larger.
you can, if you need to, you can also right click and pin Charlie as well. Um, so for my CV, you can see it's just a list. At the top in the header, I've put my name. I've put multidisciplinary artist, illustrator, poet, and musician. This is my big master copy, so this is the copy that I have pretty much everything on. Um, and uh, so I also put like my email, my social media. You can put your phone number, like whatever contact information that you need to put in that. You can put that there. I usually put contact information in the header. It shows up on every page. That way, if in the rare case it's a printed document, they get separated, people can find them again. Um, so you'll see I've got an education section. I've got another section here for residencies, and oh, it's showing links. Um, I've got one for performances. I've actually included hyperlinks for some things because we're submitting things digitally so much now. Uh, People can, I'm not sure if they do, but people can click on the links and go see stuff. So I've got press and publications. So this is uh, like interviews that I've done, zines that I've been published in. Um, and I've also got some information about like teaching and tutoring that I've done. For me, uh, I separated my teaching and tutoring and my workshops because they're separate. Um, my workshops are more in a lecture style and for like groups of people, whereas like when I'm talking about teaching and tutoring and mentorship and things like that, it's usually one-on-one. So it's different. And like you can also include memberships. Some people will call it affiliation. So you can talk about um, like different groups you're involved with, like Arts Link New Brunswick, or like the Disability Art Collective. Um, it can give people kind of an idea of more of like who you are and what you do and stuff like that. Um, so that's kind of a look at CVs. You can tell it's everything is listed by date. You want to start with the most recent things on your CV. So I'm going to go back up to the top. So my most recent thing in education is that I did ArtsLink NB's Catapult Art Accelerator in 2023. So that's why that's at the top. And my college education that I got almost 10 years ago is near the bottom of the education list. Um, if you have shows, if you have art shows like galleries and exhibits and stuff, you can, because I know a lot of people do get a lot of shows. So what you can do is you can separate those into group exhibits and solo exhibits. If there's stuff that if you've got too much, like I know a lot of people who are visual artists have so many group exhibits, and some people have a lot of solo exhibits. It just depends on what path they're taking. And you can put selected. And I think that's super useful because you can show um, that way instead of having like 25 things on your list, you can have whatever you deem necessary, 5 to 10, whatever you have room for. And it just shows like this is the best of what I have. Um, so selected works really well, like including the word selected. Uh, so I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen. Uh, um, so something else you can include as well is awards, honors, and grants that you've received. Like I know for me, I need to add my Arts MB grants to my CV, um, and the information about that. Um, Other sections you can include is like if you do music, you can have performance. Your press can also be called bibliography. Some people will use that word. Um, Another piece you can talk about is collections. So, like, if you're collected, I know like the provincial and federal government will collect pieces, different municipalities also collect pieces. So, like, if you've got work in collections or you're being collected, like maybe you are collected in Europe or in another province, it can be super cool to put that on your CV, to talk about kind of where your pieces are. Um, you don't have to put a whole pile of information in there for that, but for like every piece. But like if you've got some really notable stuff, it's nice to put that on your CV. It's also good to put like if you're studying with different people, so like maybe you're taking music lessons with someone super wonderful, or maybe you're studying under an incredible visual artist. It's cool to put that in too, because you can kind of highlight like where you're going with your career, and also that you've got continuing education going on privately, which is nice to mention. Um, so another section that is great to include on a CV is related professional experience. Um, so this is a great section for things that don't really fit, but are still cool. So if you curated exhibits, that can go in there. Um, so like for me, where I have split up my teaching and workshops, I could move my workshops to a related experience for a bit more of a clean design on my CV. So it's a little less confusing because it looks like I'm repeating myself with just teaching and workshops. Um, And so like even if you've like done a mural, or like I've been in a parade, so when you've done those really cool things that might be a little random, the related experience or related professional experience is a great place to put those really cool and interesting things. Um, so that's pretty much everything I've got to say about CVs. I will add one thing that I like to include sometimes is you can include like a little tagline, like 1 to 2 sentences of like a little mini bio. Not everyone does it, and you don't have to do it, but it can be good to add this like couple little sentences of like just who you are, like because people can identify you a little bit better. It helps contextualize your CV a little bit more because it is a big list. So it can be uh, when people are flipping through a lot of them, they might be a little tired. So it's nice to give them a little more context. Um, so does anyone have any questions about CVs right now?
Um, Yes, Jessica, for the separate document for depending on what you're saying to create a separate CV for, let's say, something that you're applying for, you'd have something tailored to that
Yeah,
particular thing.
I think
And
that's
okay, and the multidiscipline because I'm like that too. So just wanted to be sure, like, so you would do a separate CV for visual, so that includes like anything like painting or photography or anything like that.
yeah.
Would that be included in visual?
Um, so what I would do is I'd look at the opportunity that you want to apply to. Um,
Hmm.
because what I've done is um I have a master document just so that I can keep track of things. So it's everything in one place. That way I don't lose anything. And that document is for me. It still has the format of a CV, but I find it helpful because I can grab and pull things from it and copy and paste onto another document because it makes it really fast to transfer my information. So if I'm like, I'm going to apply to this thing for visual art, I can pull all my stuff from visual art and copy paste it. Or if I'm applying for something multidisciplinary, but I'm like, well, I don't really want to include stuff that I've done with textiles, but I want to include uh, like digital painting stuff that I've done and video game work that I've done and some visual art stuff that is close to concept design, or even like figure drawing stuff. I could pull that type of thing. Uh, so you're trying like with the kind of targeted one because we don't want to overwhelm people with information. It helps you kind of tailor it down so you get to pick like what's the best information to include for the opportunity. So like just like with our resumes when we apply for a job, um, we're not sending them every single thing. Like we're not lying, we're just giving them the information that's most important because we're respecting their time. Um, so that's what we're doing with this is we're kind of going like we all have so many things that we're doing. I know a lot of us wear so many different hats, and we're just kind of paring it down to fit the opportunity to kind of keep
Okay, that
simple.
makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah, that makes
excellent.
sense. Yeah. Hmm.
And I see that you've got your hand up, Carly.
I was just wondering, would you put like for my writing, maybe a little section for poetry, a
Yeah.
little section for memoirs,
Um,
or other writing style?
so for that, I would include like I'm picking my words, I'm thinking for a second. So I would include like things that you've had published or even like things that you've had presented. Like I know you mentioned that you've had stuff read at rallies with Acorn. Um,
Yeah,
so you could put down the date of the rally. You could put down, this poem, so like title of your poem, presented at this rally at this location. I don't put full dates unless you know them. If you know them, you can, but
yeah.
I'll put the month
I
and
can't remember
I put
too.
the month. I put the month and the year.
Yeah,
Because it's a little shorter, it saves you some space,
okay.
and it saves you some space up here in your mind.
Yeah, and since sometimes my memory can be uh, as patchy as one as can be like a patchwork quilt.
I understand. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think
Um,
so.
Okay, and I will mention this too. If you have different sections that I didn't cover, because I know I did look at a few different things, but I know I didn't touch on everything. Um, if there's stuff that you're doing that I didn't mention, you can create your own sections. That's fine, because I know there's so many different disciplines. Um, you can you put what you need and then edit it afterwards. Um, so. I'm going to move on to artist statement and artist bio. So I'm going to talk a little bit about artist bio versus artist statement. So kind of what are they not? So your artist bio is written in third person. So Jessica is an artist. And your artist statement is written in first person. So I am an artist. So those are two kind of key points about them. Is they're both written kind of differently. And one for the artist bio talks about who am I versus for your artist statement, what do I do? Where in like your artist bio, you're meeting the artist, and in your art statement, you're meeting the artist's work. So I'm going to talk about art bio first, because art bio is my favorite, actually. So it's written in the third person. And what you do with your art bio is, you're introducing yourself. It's giving facts about you that relate to your work. So you can talk about your education, you can talk about your awards that you've received, where you've lived, where you've traveled, and like anything like that you've done. So it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's like an entire summary of your CV, but like it's like a brief kind of giving highlights, but talking about it like a story. So, you always want to include a few sentences about what you do. And, if you're putting a date in your bio or your artist statement, you want to reference by the year. Because it's a lot easier instead of saying in October I did a workshop on art writing. Because you're gonna have to change that next year. It's gonna be in 2024. I did this. So it saves you some time. And something to remember too, play with the length of your bio. So start with like 250 words and then cut it down to 150. And then try cutting it down even shorter to 75 to 100 words. So you can get really short with it. People will ask you for any length. I find typically people ask for 250 words. But I've used my 75 to 100 word bios a couple of times. So people will ask for short ones. So I'm actually just going to share my screen. I've decided for this presentation that I was just going to share my art writing because I feel like it's a good example to be able to share your own work. It's stuff that I've written and I know it. I know it the best, and I found I've also been able to look at it retrospectively, which has been good. So you can probably see my bio on the screen here. So Jessica Kenny is a Fredericton-based neurodivergent artist, musician, and poet. They specialize in discovering unique and playful combinations between different mediums, including digital art, sculpture, illustration, painting, music, and poetry. Not only is Jessica a college-educated artist with diplomas from the Center for Arts and Technology and the Gaming and Animation Institute of Fredericton, they're also a self-taught flutist and poet. Jessica enjoys finding connections between unlikely mediums in ways that delight both the artist and the viewer. With a motley and fun combination of techniques, Jessica explores chaotic ways of thinking and creating, resulting in the presentation of concepts and ideas in a new light. Jessica wants to make viewers question, learn, and think. So you can stop at just that one paragraph because it does sum up fairly nicely. In the next paragraph, I talk a bit about some of the work that I've done. So I talk about I exhibited my touching music installation in September 2023, and that it was included in a group exhibit. How I had received funding in the form of a JL microbursary from the Jane LeBlanc Legacy Fund for my installation. I also talked about graduating from the ArtsLink NB Catapult program in November 2023. So, and where I learned business skills. So it's uh, just talking about kind of like what I've done and how I'm doing my work, and a little bit of uh, just kind of achievements and things. So it's hard because bio writing can feel so it can feel really braggy. That's why I think it's nice to be able to write it in third person, um, because that way you're not um, it doesn't feel as braggy. It's not bragging to talk about the cool things that you do. Um, it's just helping people understand like the stuff that you're doing. So a lot of times, like when I've been asked for a bio, it's been for publications. So like when I got the microbursary from the Legacy Fund, they had asked for a bio. Uh, when I was in a parade, uh, I got invited to participate in a parade. So they asked for a bio to put in their information publication pamphlet. Um, and when I've done interviews, people have asked for bios. Um, so it's just to contextualize kind of like, who are you? Um, does anyone have any questions about our bio? I know a lot of what I try to do with art bio is I still try to think about kind of like how, what, and why. Um, so I still think about, what am I doing? Sometimes there's a little bit of why that you can include in your bio. You don't include as much of the why, you really include more of like, what are you doing? Or like who are you parts of it. And you do talk a little bit about what you're doing and your achievements and things like that. So things that you've done. So it kind of contextualizes where you're going. Does anybody have questions? Okay. Um, so we'll talk about art statement. um, so artist statements are written in first person. So you're talking about, me, my work, um, and it talks about your work, what you do. It's not really a place for resume. It's more talking about um, how. It's really talking about like the how of your work, the why, um, and it gives a space for your audience to kind of gain insight. So it could be people in a magazine. Um, it could be people going to an art gallery and reading about you and your body of work that you have at the gallery in the pamphlet. Um, so it's just trying to get people to connect to your work. Um, it focuses on kind of how, what, and why of what you're doing, and it tells the story of your work. So um, I know with my artist statement, which I'll share on the screen, I find I've had the most trouble with artist statement because it's really hard for me to go between kind of writing a bio and writing art statement. They're not the same thing, and it's really easy to start just writing a bio in first person. So I'm just going to share my screen. So here's my art statement. Um, it's 3 paragraphs. You can do like anywhere from like 2 to 5 paragraphs. It's good to experiment with different lengths because people will ask you for different lengths, and different projects that you apply to will ask for different word counts and different lengths. So, as a disabled neurodivergent artist, I often see and experience the world in vastly different ways. My neurodiversity leads me to make connections in ways that others may not. To me, everything is connected, and I aim to share that with the world. I always look to give people opportunities and to explore the world in a new way and to discover chaotic and creative ways of thinking. I want my work to teach others that observing, listening, and exploring are equivalent to learning, and that learning can be extremely fun. Being a multidisciplinary artist is a necessity, not a choice for me. In my practice, I use different mediums to accommodate my changing ability due to my chronic pain. This results in adjustable art. Using different mediums and combining mediums lets me have more freedom and keeps things interesting. I often talk about chaos in my work. Uh, to me, embracing the chaos means accepting the things in my life I can't control and living with being different. I'm a chronic pain sufferer, I have mental illness, I'm neurodiverse, and I have some mobility disabilities, so there's often an invisible and cacophonous symphony constantly playing inside my body. In August 2023, I completed work on Touching Music, a multimedia installation where viewers can touch and interact with giant felt sheet music. This unique installation is a convergence of music, art, and textile that is designed to facilitate learning through play by placing handmade music notation onto needle felted staves. Touching Music introduces people to sight reading and composition in a playful way, tearing down barriers of intimidation that many people feel when they are first introduced to written music. I need to add a paragraph at the end to kind of sum it up. So this was just kind of a general artist statement, just kind of talking generally about my work. And um, a lot of times with my work, I do tend to use more than one medium. Um, and at the time when I wrote this, I was focusing really heavily on how different mediums like art and music and textile could converge to create something new. Um, so you can kind of see how different the styles are between the art statement and the artist bio, because the bio is talking more about accomplishments. The artist statement is more talking about, you know, how I'm working in, well, in this project, I was working in felt. So, like, I'm talking more about what I'm working in and why. I'm talking about why the things that I do matter to me. Um, so I hope that gives you a little bit more clarity on kind of the differences of these different pieces of writing. Does anybody have questions about artist statement or anything?
So I love your art statement. That is so cool. That is so nice, Jessica.
Thank you.
So you write about like why you do it, like what inspires you. You can put that in
Yep.
the art statement too, like kind of like what makes you tick, like why you do this and what inspires you to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I'd like to do in my new art statement is like what inspires me to do this? What's the driving force behind it kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I
think
think
that kind of grabs, their attention.
that's
Yeah,
the point, that you've got the
yeah.
point exactly.
Yeah.
That's the core of artist statement, is to grab people and be like, this is me, this is my work, this is why I'm extremely cool. And yeah.
Okay.
The other thing to remember too is, we can use artist statement for like ourselves, but we can also use artist statement for like a body of work. So like your recent silkwork collection that you were doing, you could do an artist statement talking about um, the different things of like the different techniques and influences and things of that you had during that time. So you could do an artist statement for a body of work. Um, and
Hmm.
that's something
And
you can
regarding
do.
climate change too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so like I could do, if I wanted to, I could do an artist statement for like my workshop series um here as well. So it's to contextualize like your work and work that you're doing. So you can always have more than one artist statement. A tip that I had read online was they were saying when you send out a bio, it's also nice to send an art statement with it as well, even if they don't ask. So it's just one extra document, so it's not usually too much of a problem to send a little extra document. Um, so yeah, does anyone have any other questions or thoughts? So we've got about 15, well, a little more than 15 minutes left. Um, is there anything that you guys would like to talk about? If you've got questions about any of this stuff, I can talk more about it. I can go back to some of my other documents. If you'd like to see, I do have I call it a multi-bio. So I've got a multi-bio if you'd like to see that. It's just I put several bios in a document that are different lengths. Um,
I have a statement. I found it very interesting how uh in your artist statement that you incorporated the part about being disabled in a
yeah,
way that it's like educational and it's really a huge part of who you are, kind of thing. And I think I'd like to do like a bit of that too,
yeah,
because yeah, because I'm like in that situation, myself. But I just love the way that you did it. It was beautifully done.
thank you. A
Yeah.
lot of what I do with that is like I think about, tone, um,
Hmm.
and audience too. So like when you're, it's good to reread the things you've written and rewrite and kind of play with your tone because you can figure out a lot of, because it's as hard as it can seem to get tone out of text. We do have tone in text, so it's good to, be mindful of kind of the tone that you use. And I find it does take a little bit of rewriting to get exactly the tone that you'd like. Um, and sometimes too, like using vocabulary. If like I know my last paragraph, I'm using words, some bigger words. I might actually, they're not like super big, but they're, I find it takes away from uh, some of the meaning, like when I'm talking about to facilitate. And it's not like a bad word, but it's just like I'd like to simplify it just so that sometimes things can get bogged down with when you use a lot of flashy vocabulary. So it's just good to kind of have in the back of your head, like, how do I want this to sound? Like, the way I wanted it to sound was just like, just someone talking to a friend.
So simplify it so it's clear, but it's simplified that no matter who's reading it, they can easily comprehend exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's important to have accessibility in our language. And I think that that's good, especially if it's something like, you're putting out in the public, anybody's reading it. Everybody could be reading it. So it's important that, you
True.
know, people can pick it up and go, "Hey, I love Tanya's work." And that's the goal.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because like we're
Cool.
using these for, sometimes you're sending them to like publications, so like magazines or places that you've done interviews with or galleries. But other times you're using, especially artist statement, you're using it kind of as and artist bio to an extent, as kind of a sales tool as well. So this is like your promotional material, and you're driving sales. So um, when the world is your oyster, but also your bread and butter, um, you kind of have to, it's good to keep in mind, like, yeah, who we want to appeal to, um, and stuff like that. So it's good to keep that in the back of our head. Um,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Our audience is really important. Yeah.
did I talk at all about active voice?
Nope, not yet.
I don't think so.
Okay. Um, I need to talk about active voice. So this is so important in so many different kinds of writing, especially in your bio, your artist statement, and also grant writing. So keep in mind, so when you're using active voice, it's like saying like, I work in felt, I work in stone, and instead of like saying it passively. So instead of saying like, the work that I do is in stone, um, it's a lot easier to say I work in stone, or I work with sculpture. I because or even saying like my work. It's really important to, and I found it really empowering as well to start saying like my work, because you're kind of taking ownership of it, and it's helping to really keep it more interesting as well as your writing. So keep in mind how you're writing. That's also part of tone, is to keep that active voice going.
Uh, I'd like to say the active versus passive voice. Passive voice is something that can happen to amateur academic writers. Like when you're trying to write something that sounds smart and like when you know what you're doing, it's a tendency to go into passive voice, which is it's sort of the type of writing that you expect to see in like a boring scientific document, like this was done in order to do this. But no, you don't write like that. You say, I did this. So just to give sort of context to like passive voice can happen so easily if you're not paying attention to that because it feels like you're writing in a smart way.
That's a really good point. It's super important. I keep it in mind when um, I'm writing anything art related, to try to really have that active voice going. I especially keep it in mind when I'm doing grant writing. So like when I'm writing like my project descriptions and things like that, I try really hard to have the active voice going on. So when I'm talking about my work, not the work will be done in this, it's my work will show this, my work will do this, um, or I will do this. It doesn't even have to just be about your work, it can be about you. Um, so yeah, that's all the content that I have for you guys tonight. Um, and I just want to say thank you, Charlie, for doing our interpretation. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys all for coming. It's been really wonderful having you. Um, so we have another community night coming up on Friday. That would be next week because we're not Sunday yet. And yeah, that should be it for everybody. If you guys don't have any questions, that would be us for tonight.
That was great, Jessica. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really did learn a lot, and it was good to refresh and, because things change and evolve and everything. But yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.